Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews, with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about Askiisoft's mind-bending, samurai-flavored slaughterfest, Katana Zero. Find out if I thought this title was a cut above the rest, or if I ultimately felt it was a bit dull. You take the role of a nameless street samurai in the dystopian city of New Mecca. Plagued by nightly hallucinations and crippling amnesia, he finds himself part of a rehabilitation program that makes use of the skills he hasn't forgotten. But even as he begins to work his way through a string of brutal assassination jobs courtesy of his psychiatrist, the question remains, who is pulling the strings and what do they want? Honestly, I loved the narrative of this game on so many fronts. The manner in which it dives right into the thick of things worked rather well for it, given that it more or less sets players in similar shoes to the protagonist, unveiling more of its world in an altogether piecemeal manner. And there was some genuinely strong bits of scene setting and dialogue at play, the likes of which made trying to unfurl the mysteries at the game's core absolutely thrilling. There's some absolutely great slices of world building and character-centric moments that were literary gunshots. Like, there are some truly powerful scenes in it. That said, the game isn't just unrelenting drama or murder. There's some distinctly sweet moments spattered throughout it, but even more prominently, a surprising amount of humor. Like, I found myself laughing a lot at the number of running jokes and silly gags that managed to feel right at home all the same. Up to and including the game straight up calling the protagonist a not-so-closeted, cosplaying weeb who might just happen to carry a full-on collectible card deck to murder scenes. Anyways, that aside, I also just found the dialogue system had a lot to offer. There's some interesting and fun dialogue options as you progress, with conversations flowing differently depending on what you've said prior, as well as if you just cut people off or wait to offer more deliberate answers. I found the playthrough where I endeavored to engage with people a lot more informative than the one where I was a snappy jerk, even though in doing the latter, I still managed to uncover some new things, in part due to the ramifications of being a complete and total jerk-ass. It wasn't just going over story permutations that kept me hooked, however. As a game, Katana Zero provides a very fast-paced action platformer, tasking the player with clearing out each screen of every mook that occupies it, while steering clear of whatever obstacles were present. That said, the way it approaches this adds some interesting elements to the formula. For one thing, both you and your opponents die in one hit, something which allows you to dramatically clear the room in a series of well-timed cuts and combat rolls, but makes even the smallest miscalculation punishing. And yet not too punishing ultimately, if only due to a handful of reasons. First off, you're armed with the ability to slow time to a limited degree, which makes time dodges or striking first a lot more doable in tense situations. More importantly, however, is the fact that you can deflect gunshots back to their proverbial sender with a swing of your sword. While there are limitations to maneuver, like being unable to reflect every shard of shrapnel from a shotgun, it does provide the players with a delicious counter-offensive option, and what's more, you don't even need to slow down time to pull it off, though, that definitely helps with the timing. That said, whilst those certainly provide the player with the ability to tackle enemies head-on and frantic displays of swordsmanship, Katana Zero also has a somewhat more strategic side to it, where it can start to feel even a bit like a stealth game. See, in most levels, the enemies aren't actually aware of your presence until they either hear you or see you, something which allows you to scout out where your opponents will be, as well as discreetly whittling down their numbers. I actually found this to be my go-to strategy in most cases, and even took a certain sadistic relish in the occasional opportunity to turn a stage's environmental obstacles against its denizens. That said, the game does enforce a time limit for each area, something which necessitates the occasional bit of recklessness, or at the very least ensures that the player always has a certain degree of tension to navigate. Honestly, it made me grateful the game was so generous with its autosaves, as dying never really set me back all that far, and each of the various scenes aren't actually that long, with their length coming more from discovering their nuances and learning how to cope with the various enemy types in the game, or just the occasional complications that will arise while you were in a stage. Hell, even the game's bosses were relatively forgiving, as well they do eschew the whole die in one hit like a chump rule. The lengthier ones actually have checkpoints in them, allowing you to figure out the nuances without having to dread the possibility of redoing the entirety of it from scratch. That said, I wasn't done with Katana Zero once I cleared it the first time. Oh no, far from that. For one thing, I'd managed to discover a bunker which housed a number of optional swords to both unlock and mess around with. Whilst they are associated with specific achievements in the game and are only accessible once you've beaten it, they offer up some interesting gameplay options for you to play through again, which is especially pertinent given that once you beat the game, you unlock its speedrun mode. Speedrun mode is its own beast entirely, providing players the options to efficiently speedrun the game, and even offering up some tools to make it more efficient, like automatically skipping cutscenes. It's also how you access the game's hard mode, and holy fucking shit. It's no joke. I'm basically a goddamn body bag factory, having cleared that I was riddled with so much lead that I would be immune to Superman's X-ray vision. It's not just the fact that the game completely remixes its enemy layout. Like, yes, there's certainly inherent brutality in the levels being even more populated and more traps and late-game enemies showing up far earlier than they used to. And like, there is a hell of a lot more traps you need to worry about. But no, what made it absolutely devilish to me was the way that it introduces enemies that are unique to that mode. Some of which change up the rules, like the martial artist who can kick you out of your role, setting up for other enemies to coup de grace you. Even the bosses get in on the fun as they gain new attacks or change up their existing ones. It's a rough as hell experience, but one that I found myself drawn into because when I finished the game, I found myself wanting more. And, well, I wanted an opportunity to swing around my shiny new swords. Thankfully, speedrun mode's save file is separate from normal, so I could at least choose to romp around the main game if I needed a break from getting my teeth kicked in or trying the time trials. Because, honestly, just sometimes I want to sit back, relax, and soak in the game. For me personally, Katana Zero just oozes style. The art for the game is outright stunning to me, and I found myself floored a number of times both the fluidness of the animations and the details just done. The simple fact that there are so many solid bits of work put into elements that you might only see briefly was astounding to me and just made it so much more special. Moreover, it manages to use its visual details to help draw players further into the story, upping the impact of so many of its moments, and it's glorious in its mindfuckery and the visual screws that it starts to introduce. Just Also, props to the fact that when you clear a stage, it replays the whole display in real time, allowing you to see stupid shenanigans you managed to pull off while under the influence of slowed time in normal time, and holy shit, some of that just makes you feel like a god after the fact. Anyways, that said, I would be doing the game a huge disservice if I didn't mention just how on point the game's soundtrack is. I found myself pumped each time I was introduced to a new stage and got some new tunes to jam to while I was carving apart baddies. I also might have found it really hilarious that I was the protagonist listening to those tracks on an iPod. Like, it's a fucking funny detail to me, but honestly, just made it a little bit better. Seriously though, I just adore the game's OST. Just fucking listen to it. Anyways, this brings me to the finale, and I'm pretty sure that at this point I have made it abundantly clear that I adore this game. Honestly, given how much I found myself hooked on its story, doing my utmost to master its mechanics and unearth its secrets, it's hard for me to really pinpoint a real fault. I mean, I do wish that it didn't quite end on a cliffhanger, given how invested I got into the story, but on a gameplay front, I still have a little bit more post-game content to crunch through if I decide I really want to try and get good at mastering its speedrun mode. Like, I find myself gushing about this game to friends Enough so that a few have rolled their eyes at me, which is why I definitely warrant this as a crit hit. And, you know, hey, for those folks who want more, there is free DLC currently in the works for it, which is basically icing on an already tasty homicide cake. Like, God, I haven't gotten this much of a kick out of brutalizing strangers in a frantic spasm of violence since Hotline Miami. That said, I'm really twiddling my thumbs waiting for this fucking DLC to come out. Please let me know if there's news about it. I would really like to dive into this. That's all. That's my TED Talk. Anywho, thanks for tuning in! If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or Monday TTRPG content, which will be coming back, probably once the Corona thing's over, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know it's a new release. There's also a Discord. You can click the link in the banner in the description to become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we do have a coffee running now to help supplement funds for a lovely editor, and make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description and the banner for them links. That said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.